Good morning. Welcome to Lake Street Church of Evanston, whether you're here in the room with me right now or online, or possibly watching this later in the week. We're just really happy to share our time and our space with you. Whatever brought you here today, I hope that you feel welcome, and I hope that whatever we create together today is meaningful for all of us. I do have a quick announcement from one of our youth. Come on, Andrew.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Andrew Audie, and you may know that I'm a member of the Lake Street Youth Group. Next week is our youth group's annual chili fundraiser for the Super Bowl of Caring, which is a national movement of faith communities to fight hunger and poverty in their communities. Last year, we raised over $2,000 for our fundraiser and are hoping to match that in 2025. This year, Lake Street Youth will split the process from the event and Interfaith Action of Evanston and refreshing the youth room with new furniture and supplies. If you've been down to the youth room recently, I'm sure you could agree it could use a little sprucing up. Currently, we're only a fourth of the way to our goal, so we really need you to dig deep. We're offering 4 types of chili: regular, vegan, and if you're really brave, fuego, which means extra spicy, and ghost pepper if you really love pain. Each 16-ounce container is $17, and you can stock up because they freeze really well. And it's easy to pay online. Check Newsy Bits for a link to the ordering form, or visit our website and select the drop-down of Youth Group Community Service. All pickups will be at McLeish Hall next Sunday, February 9th, 2025, between 10 a.m. and noon. Thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting our youth.
Thank you, Andrew. And one more announcement. Immediately after church today in the parlor, I'll be joined by Sue Lolbach and Councilman Newsma. We're going to be talking about the Envision Evanston plan and why we think people should have houses. So please join me after church if you're able to. We'd really appreciate it. And with that, I want to call your attention, as always, to our Native Lands and Reparations acknowledgement on the back. This ties in perfectly with what we'll be talking about after church today, and also what we talk about during church every week. Understanding the choices that our ancestors made, the choices that some of us made in the past, choices that we might want to make differently in the future, and how all of that is part of our story and part of what we want to create together. So I just call your attention to that, and I do encourage you to read it again, even if you've read it before. Thank you.
Please stand if you're able for the call to worship. The prophets, past and present, guide us towards the emerging world to come. They show us what's required for collective liberation. A world where deep freedom abounds. Freedom of movement for those with disabilities. freedom from the threat of violence, freedom to rest, create, and play, who makes herself known through the wisdom of the prophets. She does not leave us without hope. be seated. The first ancient witness reading this morning is from Jeremiah 1, 4 through 10. Now the word of Yahweh came to me and said, "Before I formed you in the womb, I chose you. Before you were born, I dedicated you. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. I said, but sovereign Yahweh, I don't know how to speak. I'm too young." But Yahweh said, "Do not say I am too young. Now go wherever I send you, and say whatever I command you. Do not fear anyone, for I am with you to protect you. It is Yahweh who speaks." Then Yahweh touched my mouth and said to me, "Look, I am putting my words in your mouth. This day I appoint you over nations and territories, to uproot and to tear down, to destroy and to overthrow, to build and to plant. Blessed be.
All right, it's our time now for our moment of wonder. So if you're here in person, the ushers are going to be coming around with microphones so you can share with me and with the rest of us some of your thoughts on today's readings, the one we've heard and the one that's coming up if you read ahead, or maybe you've seen this one before. I want to hear what you like, what you don't like, what you would change, what bothers you, what you love. And there's a reflection question that you can also answer. Can you see yourself as a prophet? And what are you a prophet of? And if you're online, you can also answer those questions and more in the chat, and I will share them if you want me to. They won't hear you at home if we don't turn the microphone on, okay. So let's, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I particularly, although I think the first reading is problematic too, I particularly like the part of thinking to let the young speak and have them be validated. I think I find in my own children and in my students right now that they often have the wisest things to say about the state of the world.
Amen.
I want to speak about the second passage, and it overwhelms me because no matter what I do, no matter how nice I am, no matter how much I give away, etc., if I don't forgive people, if I am still angry at people, it's not enough. Even if I love a whole bunch of people, if I have grudges, it's still not enough.
I wouldn't gloss over this passage because it brings a very basic philosophical question between predestination and free will. So this is something that anybody who's reflective about the universe surely has been, if not troubled, perplexed, because how can both be true?
If I were a prophet, I hope I'd be a prophet of gratitude.
All right, I don't think I see any more hands. So at this point, I'm going to invite our children in 5th grade and younger to join Ms. Julia in their classroom to continue their worship. They're going to head out this way. You can find them, if they are your children and your children only, or if you brought these children, you can find them in coffee hour afterwards.
The second ancient witness reading is from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 1 through 13. Even if I can speak in all the tongues of earth and those of the angels too, but do not have love, I am just a noisy gong, a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy, such that I can comprehend all mysteries and all knowledge, or if I have faith great enough to move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away everything I own to feed those poorer than I am, then hand over my body to be burned, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind. Love is not jealous, it does not put on airs, and it is not snobbish. It is never rude or self-seeking. It is not prone to anger, nor does it brood over injuries. Love doesn't rejoice in what is wrong, but rejoices in the truth. There is no limit to love's forbearance, to its trust, its hope, its power to endure. Love never fails. Prophecies will cease, tongues will be silent, knowledge will pass away. Our knowledge is imperfect, and our prophesying is imperfect. When the perfect comes, the imperfect will pass away. When I was a child, I used to speak like a child and think like a child, reason like a child. But when I became an adult, I put childish ways aside. Now we see indistinctly, as in a mirror. Then we will see face to face. My knowledge is imperfect now. Then I will know, even as I am known. There are, in the end, three things that last: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Blessed be.
I have just a quick announcement for the folks at home, because I forgot to mention it earlier. We are doing communion today, so if you haven't yet, if you want to grab some sort of food and some sort of drink so that you can join in with us when the time comes, then I encourage you to do that. So our readings this week are both from the lectionary. They were set years in advance, and the lectionary is a 3-year cycle, so it doesn't align with elections or Olympics or leap years or any other 2 or 4-year cycle in our lives. And I just feel like I need to point that out, because if we threw in Psalm 23 and John 3:16, this is like a starter pack of Bible verses. It's the ones that you're going to see printed all over the merchandise in the Christian bookstores or hanging on walls in my grandma's house. And familiarity can breed contempt, or at least ambivalence, I think. I almost didn't include both of them, because I think they're both passages that we're likely to have some kind of strong feelings, maybe some baggage around, and I usually prefer to tackle one of those at a time. But I really like what they have to say in conversation, and I hope you will too as we continue our conversation. I somehow almost forgot that this passage in Jeremiah is one that people like to use as an argument against safe and legal abortion. It's never read that way to me personally, even growing up in an evangelical church. So it wasn't until I was engaging in conversation with diverse faith leaders this week, thinking about ways that we would talk about the lectionary, that I remembered. And there are churches in America this week where that's the sermon, and you can imagine those for yourself. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I just want to say that as a Baptist, I think that we have the right and the responsibility to read and interpret Scripture for ourselves. If this passage resonates strongly with you as connecting to your personal choices around reproductive health, that's fine for you. In its original Jewish setting, it almost certainly would not have. Jewish tradition is that the soul enters the body when the infant's head emerges, so people just wouldn't have been thinking like that. This is an important reminder, I think, that the conclusions that we draw about Scripture from our own reading and prayer and tradition and discussions are meant to guide our choices, not other people's. Rather than a case against abortion, my sense of this passage has always been more of God comforting and encouraging Jeremiah to do something that God knows Jeremiah can do, but which Jeremiah feels nervous about or unprepared for. I imagine a conversation between a parent and their child who's getting ready to do something that they've been preparing for a long time, maybe a performance or an athletic event or a big test or their first job or leaving for college. The parent might say, "I know you can do this. You've always been talented at it, and you've worked so hard. I'm just a phone call away if you need me." The stuff about wombs is poetry, I think. It's words of comfort from a loving creator. The real meat of this, to me, is the promise of ongoing support from God as Jeremiah goes to deliver prophecies that people will not want to hear. Throughout human history, continuing today, I think we find prophets in our midst. And I think very often that they are telling us things we do not want to hear. I'm not talking about the guys on the street corners yelling that we're all going to go to hell. I don't want to hear that, but I also don't think much of them as prophets if that's all they've got. Because I think we also need to take a look at what Paul has to say about prophets in 1 Corinthians. Paul is absolutely doing some of his best work here, and we're pretty sure he did actually write this one, at least for the most part, so I will give him props. Corinthians 13 is a real banger for the most part. And even in the text itself, he's telling us that it doesn't matter how beautiful it is. If it doesn't come from a wellspring of love, it's not worth listening to. Honestly, this is key to dealing with the rest of Paul and the pseudo-Pauline letters. If it's not loving, it's not true prophecy. Excuse me. On that note, I have to point out the one problem I have with this section, which is the part about putting away childish ways. I understand that there is a difference between childish and childlike, but I personally just really dislike any language that equates children with negative characteristics. We often say childish when we mean cruel, narcissistic, selfish, ill-tempered, and that is not fair to children. When people use comparisons to women and girls to tear others down, we recognize the misogyny and we try to do better. Children deserve the same care, especially because they are least equipped to grasp the metaphor and the nuance, and they're likely to be really hurt by that kind of language. In Jeremiah, we have God assuring the prophet that he is not too young to do what God needs of him. In the Gospels, Jesus chides the disciples for trying to turn away children who want to visit him, and he tells them to be more like children. So I think I'm on good standing to say that Paul messed up here, even in his best work. So do we all, right? I mean, that's kind of what Elmo was saying earlier, and relatable. So prophets, when delivering the most authentic prophecy, speak from a place of love. That does not mean good vibes only. Loving prophecies can be hard to hear or to deliver. It might tell us that our systems are not sustainable. It may say the things that served us in the past are not working, and we have to make changes. It may challenge our very perception of reality as we come to see some of the injustices that have surrounded us our entire lives that we were unaware or unwilling to perceive. It may tell us that we aren't the main character, that our comfort isn't as important as someone else's survival. There's honestly no shortage of loving prophecies in our world right now. I know it can feel that there is, because there's also a lot of clanging cymbals. And the volume, like both the amount and the decibel level, can be overwhelming. We have so much access to information and diverse voices if we seek them out. You could spend all your time trying to take it in and sort it out and never get close. Here's something that I've come to believe about creation and about our relationship with the divine and finding a place for ourselves in it all. It's all fractals. That's a mathematical term that describes something where each part of it is the same as the bigger thing. So it's like the part makes up the whole, the small is the same as the big. It happens in nature, and you see art based on it, which is kind of psychedelic. I promise you've seen it if you didn't know what it was called. And I won't pretend to understand the mathematical aspects of it. I don't know. Mostly I know it from an art standpoint, but here's how it applies. I think about my body, its cells, their functions as a metaphor for a community or a planet or even a galaxy, and then that thing becomes a metaphor for the bigger thing. And breaking it all down, something that's so unfathomably large, into something manageable makes it more comprehensible for me. Even if it's an imperfect metaphor, which I'm sure it is. Some of you might be serious mathematicians, and you can tell me how I'm wrong and I won't understand. To quote the phrase that the feminist Carol Hanisch made popular in the 1960s, the personal is political. There are prophets in your daily personal life, and almost none of them have ever stood at a pulpit. You may be that prophet for someone too. I want to do a little exercise. I'm going to read what Paul writes about love, and when he says love, I want you to imagine the sentence with your own name in the place of love. So for example, Paul says love is patient. Imagine that George is patient, Nia is patient. Love is kind. Ritu is kind. Love is not jealous. Jim is not jealous. Love does not put on airs. Bill does not put on airs. Love is not snobbish. Barb is not snobbish. Love is never rude or self-seeking. Karen is never rude or self-seeking. Love is not prone to anger. Michael is not prone to anger. Love does not brood over injuries. Chris does not brood over injuries. Love does not rejoice in what is wrong. Jane does not rejoice in what is wrong. Love rejoices in the truth. Ron rejoices in the truth. Love has unlimited mercy. Mary has unlimited mercy. Love has unlimited trust. Miriam has unlimited trust. Love has unlimited hope. Tammy has unlimited hope. Love has unlimited power to endure. Scott has unlimited power to endure. Love never fails. Jennifer never fails. When everything else falls away, there's three things that are left: faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. I imagine, as you went through that with me, some of those were easier to hear with your own name than others. None of those, or none of us, are all of those things all the time. But I think that all of us are all of those things some of the time. I encourage you to make this exercise a part of your spiritual practice this week. Think about the feelings that you have when you imagine each statement as something that you can embody at times. Pay attention to images or words that come to mind, people or issues or questions that pop up. I think that this can help you discern where you might be called to do more or do less, or to join with others, where you might already be a prophet without knowing it, and how you can strengthen your message and your presence to be one of love. God tells Jeremiah he's not too young. Is there something that you feel pulled toward, but something's holding you back? Maybe it's your age, or your experience, or your education, or your confidence. I urge you to ask yourself, does God think that I'm too young, or too old, or too shy, or whatever to do this thing? Is there someone or a group of people I can partner with to support each other in the thing that I'm being moved to? I believe that everyone has a role in the work of co-creating the beloved community. Everyone's voices and story and vision matter. We cannot just sit back and wait for the other prophets to fix it. It's a constant process of building community and mutuality from the small and personal outward, ever expanding. There's a lot of things that you can get plugged into right here at the church right now. There's the new Sanctuary Movement network, which we're part of, with so many ways to contribute. This week, our church is hosting leaders from organizations throughout the city to learn more about our rights and responsibilities as a sanctuary city and how faith communities and businesses and city offices can all work together to protect our neighbors. There's the session right after church today that I mentioned, where I'll be joining with Sue from Connections for the Homeless and Council Member Jonathan Newsma from Evanston's 4th Ward to talk about Envision Evanston 2045 and what it could mean for ending homelessness in Evanston and working to right historic wrongs in the housing market here, especially for Black residents. There's opportunities to feed people, to support Palestinian liberation, to engage in reparations work, to visit people who are sick or lonely or don't have much mobility. If you're not already connected with Peace and Justice or with the Deacons, they are both great places to start. I also encourage you to look into the ways that transgender children and adults are being especially targeted in the flurry of executive orders, especially regarding documents that they need for freedom of movement and around healthcare. This all ties back to things like freedom of migration and access to reproductive health care, which are also under attack. It's all connected, and many people are experiencing oppression on more than one front. Somewhere in here, there's something that you are called to be a prophet for, or there's a prophet in your midst who can use your help sharing the love. I know you can do this. You've always had a talent for it, and you've worked so hard. If you feel afraid, God and this community are just a phone call or a prayer or a breath away, ready to support and rejuvenate you. Blessed be. As we prepare now for our moment of silence and meditation, I'll just remind you that there are prayer cards in the back of your pews that you can fill out if you have a prayer that you want to share with the congregation, and the ushers will pick those up afterwards. And if you're online, you can enter those in the chat. One prays prayers for peace and ceasefire in Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ukraine. Prayer for our leaders in the USA to take action based on justice and love. Loving God. Hear our prayer. One prays for those facing difficult surgery. Loving God. Hear our prayer. One prays, help us to hear and be open and receptive to those actions that we are called to do. Loving God. Hear our prayer. Prayers for Jim as he enters hospice and prepares for his journey home. May divine love light his path. Loving God. Hear our prayer. Prayers of thanksgiving to be living in Illinois and Evanston, with the governor and mayor standing up for the rights of transgender humans, especially our trans youth. Gracious God, in the midst of so much fear among so many, may the federal workers who feel threatened find the strength to carry out occasional acts of resistance and find joy in so doing. Loving God. May the world be full of love and hope. Loving God. One asks our prayers for a close friend who woke up one day and could not hear. Loving God. We have a prayer online, prayers of protection for my trans kid who has encountered plenty of bigotry right here in Evanston, and for trans kids around our country. Loving God. Ancient God of transformation, open our hearts to receive the wisdom of the prophets among us, those who are tuned into the risky path of love for the sake of liberation. Guide us in protecting their well-being and their wisdom. Align us with the callings of those acquainted with systems that require uprooting. During seasons of upheaval, we desire deep wisdom, and we call upon radical creativity. Amen. I invite you now to our time of offering. This is a time you can partner with us. We crave your time, energy, and attention even more than your money, but we do appreciate all the ways that you show us that you support our mission and want to be a part of this community. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you.
took bread, and after he broke it, he blessed it and he said, "Do this in remembrance of me."
In the same way, after supper, Jesus took the cup, blessed it, and said, "Do this in remembrance of me. As often as you eat and drink, which is every day, remember me. Remember what I taught, remember what I stood for, remember my path of love, remember me." If you choose
The call to commitment is an excerpt from On the Brink of Everything by Parker Palmer. Suffering breaks our hearts, but the heart can break in two quite different ways. There's the brittle heart that breaks into shards, shattering the one who suffers as it explodes, and sometimes taking others down when it's thrown like a grenade at the ostensible source of its pain. Then there's the supple heart, the one that breaks open, not apart, the one that can grow into greater capacity for the many forms of love. Only the supple heart can hold suffering in a way that opens to new life. How can I make my heart more supple? The answer, I think, is to exercise my heart by stretching it, the way a runner stretches the leg muscles to avoid injury. With regular exercise, my heart is less likely to break apart into shards that may become shrapnel and more likely to open into largeness. These days, my opportunities for heart stretching increases along with the losses that come with aging. And it all comes down to this: take it in, take it all in. Blessed be.
Briefly, I have some late-breaking Chili fundraiser news. The QR code seems to have a glitch, so please either type in the link that's here or use the link that's in your email. And if all else fails, just email me. We'll make sure you get your chili. Beloved, the artists, the wailers, the teachers, the community organizers, the land protectors, the prayerful, the researchers, the caregivers, the table turners, the reality benders, the liberation beckoners, go forth on the wave of wisdom among us. The holy dances among us. Thanks be to God.